internet has changed the world, in many ways has made it smaller, but it's also made the channels between the government and its citizens much easier to navigate. Now, the more people who use the internet and become reliant on it, the more that we, as a society, are getting closer and closer to a decisive point. Now, the founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, argues that the decision we must make as a society is whether the internet will become an instrument of freedom or of oppression. He's co-authored a new book called Cypherpunks, Freedom and the Future of the Internet, along with Jacob Appelbaum, Jeremy Zimmerman, and Andy Mueller-Mon. It's a question that many people are actually not asking, that very few have explored. So we want to take an in-depth look, and I'm joined now by one of those authors, Jeremy Zimmerman. Hey, Jeremy, thanks for being on the show. Talk first, this cypherpunk movement. I know it's been around for a couple decades now. Tell me a little bit about the movement's mission.
Well, the word cypherpunk is a pun on cyberpunk, which is a science fiction current which describes a world based on information and that predicts the internet in a way. And a pun on cyberpunk and cipher, which is encryption of communication. This was the name of a mailing list in the 90s that was frequented by the most brilliant hackers, programmers, people who invented the cryptographic tools we are still using today. And the political notion of encryption and digital technologies was one of the primary source of concerns for the people on this mailing list. Many things happened on this mailing list.
And from what I understand, right now already there's a whole lot of buzz around this book because it really raises some important questions. I guess, Jeremy, what's your hope for people who read this? I mean, what do you want the takeaway to be?
Well, I hope that people will understand that we are in a crucial moment of our history, and that the difference between the two society models that we see, one would be a totalitarian nightmare in which technology will be used to enslave people, to control them, to surveil and punish them. And in another world, technology will be at the service of the individuals. Technology will be used to access to culture, to share knowledge, to get in better contact with democracy, to participate in democracy. I guess that the difference between the two is the way we handle technology, is our relationship as human beings to technology. Some would say, oh, I understand nothing about technology, I don't really want to know. But not knowing technology is a bit like not knowing how to read and write. So it is about the sharing of knowledge on why technology matters so much, while the very notion of the architecture of the communication networks we use matters so much, why personal data and privacy are so paramount to other fundamental freedoms. Today.
Let me kind of take apart what you've just said. I mean, I think it's very obvious, certainly the freedom part of the internet, the part of the internet that makes the world small, that makes it so, Facebook, for example, you can see your friends living all around the world, what they're doing, so the places they're going, the music they're in, that can make it culturally really a neat thing for anyone in this world. We saw sort of with the Arab Spring what Twitter did in that realm. But you said that, on the negative aspect, the technology could be used to control people and enslave people. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's my point about the crucial importance of the notion of architecture of our communication systems. When you refer to Twitter and Facebook, those are heavily centralized infrastructures that are in the hands of private actors, private corporations, who know everything about you. And the difference between those centralized services and the decentralized services that everyone can use as well is fundamental. In one case, if a government wants to access the data on a centralized platform, they just have to seize the material, they just have to issue subpoenas or get court orders, and they may access all this data. Also, all this data stored in one point can leak sometimes in the future, and then all the life of people will be exposed. So it is really about making the distinction, and it is about who you trust and who you don't. And those technical intermediaries of the internet are getting such a crucial role. People trust them without even knowing what they're about. People accept those contracts when they subscribe an account on Facebook and Twitter without even reading them. And this is something extremely dangerous. When you just imagine, for instance, you mentioned Arab Spring. The Ben Ali regime, before falling, harvested the passwords of the Tunisian citizens by snooping on their communications. The power that one government could obtain over its citizens by getting to know in real time what they do on Facebook and such websites is tremendous. And we have massive examples around the world.
Well, I think that's a really good point. And a lot of people would be surprised to know, a lot of people here in the United States, it's not just, for example, Ben Ali. It's not just leaders in other faraway countries. I mean, there is talk now that even the United States government wanted to, there was talk that the Hamas, I believe, Twitter page, that they wanted to shut that down. So talk a little bit about that.
Of course, it's all around the world. It's not only in the most brutal dictatorship. I mean, even Russia imposed recently a blacklist of websites that are censored from the internet. And the so-called Western democracies play a great role in the surveillance of the communications. For instance, the French company Amesis sold to Gaddafi's Libya a nationwide interception system that helped monitor and surveil all the communications in Libya. So the governments are increasingly trying to get a hold on the internet and to control communications online, and they can use those extremely powerful centralized private companies such as Twitter and Facebook to access their citizens' data. So the only solution is for people to understand the crucial importance of privacy and the secrecy of online communication, and to get into using those encryption tools that allow people to protect themselves, their personal data, to protect themselves, their private communication, with strong mathematical tools that the states can break only with extremely difficult and costly efforts.
Yeah, it's almost like the more expansive the internet gets, the more these governments also want their power over it to be expanded. It is very interesting. Let me switch gears for a second, Jeremy. I want to talk briefly about your one of your co-authors, Julian Assange. He has, of course, been holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy in London for months and months now. Talk a little bit about, first of all, how he was able to contribute to this book, and second of all, how what we saw happen with him and with the WikiLeaks website sort of is an example of what you guys have spoken about in your book.
Yes, well, to me, there's no question about it. Julian Assange is a hero, and WikiLeaks is of public interest. His recent political asylum granted by Ecuadorian government actually proved his allegations that his case is not about being extradited to Sweden for being heard in this very flaky case of minor rape. No, the Ecuadorian government confirmed that the risk is extremely serious, that if he gets extradited to Sweden, he would then be extradited to the US, where he would probably never exit the country. So he currently has the whole of the US government against him. There's a tremendous mediatic storm against him that swamped the operations of WikiLeaks. But at the very beginning of it, WikiLeaks is an initiative of a very few people who were just using a free and open internet in order to do what they believed was the right thing to do. And this is the promise of a free and open internet that is by essence universal, where everybody can participate, where everybody can innovate, where everybody can think of new ways of attempting to change the world. And I think that this power of the individuals through a free and open internet that scares so much the governments and some big dominant corporations who are teaming up to attempt to control the internet today.
Certainly some really big questions being asked in your new book, Cypherpunks. I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Jeremy Zimmerman joining us from Paris, France.